Am I the a-hole for not going by my dad's because he always sides with his girlfriend and her daughter? My parents split custody. It's pretty random. Some days I'm home and sometimes I'm by my dad. I'm 15 female. Dad started dating Jane a while ago. Maybe a year. She has a daughter, Mandy, that's 12 or 13, I think. Then they started spending a lot of time at my dad's. They have their own apartment, but they're still always by him. The first time they stayed over when I was there and somehow Mandy ended up in my bed. Her mom has this cot/bed thing she brought to my dad's for her, but somehow I woke up in the middle of the night and she was in my bed. I kicked her out. Then my dad and Jane said that was mean, and I have a fool anyway, so I should share. There's other stuff. I have a chair in my dad's living room I got as a gift. It's comfy, and when I move out, it'll go with me. Well, Mandy always wants to race for the chair. Even when I win the race, my dad makes me let her sit in it because they're guests. So I ended up sitting on the floor because my dad has a recliner, and Jane lays across the couch. So I stay in my room instead. My dad's tried getting me to come out there by them, but why would I have to sit on the floor like a dog? He keeps saying I'm being a difficult teenager, but that's not it though. One time my mom and I went and did some stuff before she dropped me off. She had bought me a blanket that had my favorite team's logo on it. I was excited to sleep with it. Stupid, I know. So she let me take it to my dad's. My dad made me share it with Mandy because it wasn't fair that I got something and Mandy didn't. It's not just the blanket it's happened with. It's anything that I have to share. But if Mandy has something I'd like to use, it tells me it's hers, and if she doesn't want to let me, she doesn't have to. One time Mandy was reading one of my books, and Jane and my dad started fighting. Jane wanted to leave, so Mandy wanted to take my book. But I said no, so she wouldn't leave. My dad yelled at me to just let her have it. They made up, so I got it back, but if they didn't, I would have lost one of my favorite books. My dad and I had plans to go ice fishing. Just him and I, something we've done since I was 7. Well, he brought Jane and Mandy along. All they did was complain. It's too cold. Fish are gross. This is boring. So we left early and he just said, sometimes you have to compromise. When I got home, I was mad. My mom was annoyed and called him and they argued. And he talked to me and repeated his compromising BS. I was supposed to go back to him a few days later, but I decided I didn't want to. I never even spent time with just him anymore anyway, so what's the point in going there? I told my mom, she said it was my choice. So I told him, and he said, I'm just used to being an only child and I can't be spoiled my whole life, and that I can't run away whenever there's a problem. Well, since then, his family is trying to get me to go back too. Am I the a-hole for not visiting my dad anymore? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your dad is failing you as a parent. Go back, with your mom waiting, and pack up everything important item you have at your dad's so that Mandy can't get her grubby little hands on your stuff. That's what my mom wants to do too. Right now, he's holding my Switch and saying I'll only get it back when I come over to talk things out. He didn't buy it either. I did. Your father is displaying absolutely disgusting behavior. I am so sorry for you. You shouldn't have to deal with this. Would you be open to going over to talk? To make it seem like you're cooperating so you can get your stuff back. Like go over, talk, get the Switch back, and suddenly pack any other important item that he could hold over you. Then get your mom to pick you up. Huh, no. I'm sure he'd include Jane and Mandy in that talk. Similar stuff has happened before this. He blames me because my cousins don't like Mandy because I don't like her, so they won't either. He has had talks with me before with them literally right there. I can't tell him that I don't want them around when they are right there, as that's kinda rude. If I were you, I'd insist that if they're present, your mom is too. You need a grown advocate who will call out adults on their BS, so that your perspective isn't trampled over as just being a difficult teen. I like this idea. Thanks. Not the a-hole at all. Your dad is prioritizing his new girlfriend and her daughter over your needs and wants. Mandy wants something, she gets it. Your chair, Mandy gets it. Your book, Mandy gets it. Your new blanket, Mandy gets it. Your dad and Jane enable the behavior, and your dad's choices have shown you he doesn't prioritize your relationship with him. I wouldn't want to go somewhere where I am made to feel like a second-class citizen. When your dad asks why you don't want to go over anymore, send him exactly what you have written here. I am so glad your mom supports you and stands up for you. Best of luck, OP. This was my situation with my dad and his wife and her daughter. My dad's wife had made it so bad that 15 years later I have no relationship with him. I couldn't even make a sandwich without having to give it to my stepsister. Run, kid. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my stepsister that we're not friends and putting my mom in a catch-22? My 17 female mom moved her fiancé in last year. Not really a fan of the guy, but my dad lives overseas, and my mom cried and kicked up a fuss when I floated the idea of going to live with him. So she promised that if I stayed, my stepdad would have no say over me, and I just had to be polite. Fair. He has 2 daughters, May 17 female and June 15 female. June is fine, we vibe. May's in my grade at school, and the best way to describe her is you'd grown a little if you were told to do a group project with her. She's awkward, not very good in school, and really sensitive about everything. She doesn't have any friends that I know of. So when our parents started talking marriage, May latched onto me like a freaking lamprey, and I can't seem to get her off my back. Before they moved in, I could mostly avoid her at school. She's in lower level classes than me. She kept trying to add and message me on SM, and I just didn't respond. Now that they've moved in, she's just always there, trying to be involved with everything I do, talking my ear off and getting in the way. I train a lot every day for my sports, and since she's not in a very good shape, the parents suggested she go to the gym with me since she expressed an interest. She pestered me the whole time about how to use the equipment and was totally worn out and ready to go when I was only a fourth the way done. I finally had it last weekend when I had a friend over after training to game for a bit, and May invited herself into my room with us without asking. I told her we didn't invite her to hang out and to leave, that she was being rude. She started crying and complained to her dad, who came in and told us to let her play. I reminded him that he can't tell me to do anything for my mom, and to take it up with her, which pissed him off. Later, we all had heavy talk and he said I was bullying May, but I told him that May is the one who inserts herself where she's not invited nor wanted. She's not my friend and she's not going to be, so I'd rather she butt out for the few months left until I leave home. My mom is upset because she's in the middle, and stepdad is making noises about breaking up if she doesn't discipline me. I've told her if she caves, I'm not coming back here while he lives here once I'm out. May has been being a drama queen and crying about it to the point that even June told her to shut up. My mom says May is just sensitive and lonely, but I don't see how that's my problem to fix. Not stay home. None of these problems are yours to fix. The fiancé father threatening to break up is between your mom and him. If he is this upset that he can't boss you around, that should be a red flag to your mom. How he treats you is what you need to be concerned about, and he overstepped a boundary here. You did right by you to point that out. Could you be more friendly to May? Yes, but you don't find her interesting and she's inserting herself into your life. She's desperate, clearly. And yes, her problems stem from the parenting she received, so she is just coping as best she can. As someone who has shaken the weird girls off of me in school, I've grown up to regret it. I was harsh for superficial reasons. They didn't fit into social hierarchies in school, and I didn't want to taint my image with my peers by hanging out with the social rejects. And I watched these girls shut themselves off from the world entirely after it became clear I didn't want to be their friend. Ultimately, it is not my fault nor responsibility, but I do wish I could go back in time and act a little differently, more compassionately for their sake. You don't owe it to her to be her best friend, but you do owe it to her to treat her with dignity. Just don't do or say anything you might regret. As someone who has shaken the weird girls off of me in school, I've grown up to regret it. I was harsh for superficial reasons. Flip side is both someone who was a weird girl and also befriended a lot of weird girls and guys. Even when I didn't jive with them, I regretted it. It takes a lot of energy to essentially teach someone how to be around other people. And no matter what you do, you end up looking like a bully when you eventually need to establish boundaries. People encourage you to befriend and help them get along more with others, but will turn around and accuse you of being toxic or trying to kill their individuality the moment you suggest certain behaviors, or a detriment to making friends. This girl is already boundary stomping when OP is making it clear they're not friends and that she doesn't want to be around her. It would be even worse if she tried to pretend they got along. Better to establish the need for space right off the bat and clearly so that there was a chance of civility, rather than Opie never getting a chance to breathe again without there being waterworks. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my in-laws to choose between me and a daughter they never had? I, 30 female, have been married to my husband, 38 male, for 9 years, and I have a long history of conflict with a woman named Sally, who used to be my husband's best friend. The trouble started right after my husband and I started dating. He had a best friend, let's call her Sally, who he now realizes he had an inappropriate relationship with. I got hateful messages after we started dating about how I stole him from her and how toxic I was. The next conflict was a couple of years later. She separated from her husband and turned to my husband for comfort. In the end, I found out after we moved back to the area, she was lying to us about everything she said happened that ended her marriage, and I confronted her saying I didn't appreciate being lied to. Sally started telling people that I was in love with her ex-husband, and that is why I took his side with everything. That was the final straw for me. I went to mother-in-law and put down a boundary that I wanted no contact with Sally. Eventually, after about a year of minimal contact had passed, my mother-in-law started pressuring me to let things go and start attending family functions again when Sally was going to be there. I told my mother-in-law that I would be willing to attend events where Sally was likely to be, but I would not socialize with Sally. As soon as that happened, I can only assume my mother-in-law told Sally about the change, because she started reaching out to my husband saying, I miss our friendship that we used to have. Recently, I received an anonymous email saying some really harsh things. I assumed this was some random person trolling me, but we looked up the IP address and it came from the area Sally lives. The email referenced my private Facebook group, my first and middle name, and was from her area. She is the only person who I have ever had this kind of a hateful situation with, so I can only assume it was from her. I decided to have a conversation with my mother-in-law and father-in-law about going zero contact with Sally, not even accidental contact, and it went terribly. It ended up with us basically telling my in-laws that they needed to decide who they wanted at a family function and tell the other party that they could not come. My mother-in-law insisted again that she wished my husband could just be friends with Sally again even if I wanted to stay away from her, and that it would fix all the problems that has been happening. I reminded her again about all the things Sally had said to me, and my mother-in-law said she still didn't believe it was true, and kept saying Sally's like a daughter to us. She is family, and she would never do those things. My father-in-law refuses to even participate in these conversations. He just gets up and walks away because he refuses to hear a bad word about Sally. I am left wondering, am I the a-hole here? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Time for some hard boundaries with your in-laws. Info. Where is your husband in all of this? He likes to avoid conflict, so for a long time he was staying out of it. But ever since she tried to start a rumor about me being in love with her ex-husband, he is done with her. I had to cut that out to make the post short enough. From what I understand is that Sally's connection to the family is your husband, and since he doesn't want any type of relationship with her, why is she still invited to any family function? It would be a different situation if the mother-in-law invites her one-on-one, but why keep inviting her to family events and make her own son and his wife uncomfortable? Her parents are my in-laws' best friends, and she grew up being close to their family. I grew up close to the family too, but because of our age difference, it wasn't as close as Sally's since she was besties with my husband for so long. She calls them her second parents, and they say she's like their daughter. Sounds like you're up against not just one relationship, but 3. Safe to assume that your in-laws fear that if they set a single boundary with Sally, they'll risk losing her and her parents/their best friends. People they've known a lot longer than they've known you. You're right to die on this hill, but understand what you're asking of them and temper your expectations accordingly. This may result in them sacrificing both you and your husband to keep the peace with Sally's family. That's a good point, and I'd want to have considered. Thank you for commenting. It helps me look at things from all angles. Last story. Am I the a-hole for defending my grandmother's decision to put me in her will and life insurance as main beneficiary? I, 30 female, have always been really close to my grandma. Even when my aunt and cousins lived with her, we would spend time together, just the two of us. Originally, it was because my own mother, her daughter, was very neglectful of me. But as I got older, we both realized we had a lot in common. I got emancipated at 16, and my grandma was my biggest supporter. As soon as I was able to, I returned the favor and helped her out with whatever she needed. Grocery shopping, yard work, deep cleaning her house. She has very poor eyesight, so can't drive. And after my grandpa died, she needed help. None of my family, aunt, her kids, uncle and his kids, mom and my younger sibling, stepped up. My grandma recently got into an accident. She needed surgery and almost died. Now that she's home and doing better, albeit needs more help than before, she decided to update her will. Originally, the will had half of her money and assets being split between her 3 children, and other half split between me, my sibling, and my 4 cousins. She changed it to me and my children receiving about 80%, and the rest of the family splitting the remaining 20%. Obviously, my family's pissed. My mom and me just recently started repairing our relationship, and now she's refusing to talk to me. My aunt calls me daily and accuses me of manipulating a frail old woman, and even went as far as making a report to Adult Protective Services, saying I'm stealing. I defend myself, saying Grandma changed her will and life insurance while of sound mind, and that is her choice. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I wanted to add, I recently got a settlement of child support from my bio father, and my family thinks that I stole that money from my mother. And both this situation and that one proves that I'm manipulating my family for money. I got the child support instead of my mother because I was neglected, and then in and out of foster care before getting emancipated. Grandma was the only person who advocated for me, but couldn't take me in as a child because of her health. Not stay home. It's clear why she has changed her will. These people are just entitled and greedy. Agreed, not stay home. Maybe your grandma could talk to a lawyer and write something about why she chose to leave that amount to you. Not stay home. The child support was always going to be for you being the child in question. Your grandmother will do what she wants. They might contest the will later, but there's nothing you can do about that. I wouldn't argue with them or engage in any kind of discussion with them over this. Talking with them about it at this point can only work against you. Not stay home. She's an adult of sound mind, like you say. You've also worked hard on helping her, and it sounds like you've done that for years. Your mother wants a big payout without doing any of the help. Your grandma isn't letting her get away with that. You haven't done anything wrong, so you're not stay home. My grandma was going to cut my mom out completely, but feels guilty because she feels responsible for how my mom turned out since she raised her. Leaving a small amount for the rest of the family is a smart move. If she left nothing, they could contest it. Enjoy your time with your grandma and cut everything else off. They sound abusive and toxic. Am I the a-hole for being surly, rude, and mean at a wedding and leaving early? Plus updates. Original post. I was asked to be a member of the wedding party. Despite this, I was the only person, not only in the wedding party, but also at the ceremony, who wasn't allowed to have a +1. This was an outdoor wedding with limited seating, and these people don't give a crap about COVID, so it wasn't about that. I was told it was because my relationship wasn't serious enough despite us being together for a year. That only engaged or married couples were invited, and that they didn't want some random guy in their wedding pictures who I might not even be with later in the future. They don't want to have to look at some random guy in their pictures even though he wouldn't have been in any of the post pictures at all. Maybe just in the background of crowd shots. There have been 0 conflicts between them and my boyfriend. And he's a nice and mild-mannered guy who gets along with everyone, so I don't think it was about him personally. I get to the ceremony and find out that literally everyone else has +1. Not just married couples, but there are couples there who have been dating for less time than me. This is when I started feeling surly. I smiled and played my part during the ceremony, but inside I was very surly and angry. We then got to the reception, which had way more people than the ceremony. This is where all the more distant friends were invited, and everyone there had +1. I was literally placed at a table as the one single person, and everyone else at the table was a couple. Some at the table were other members of the wedding party, but others were random distant acquaintances. People started asking me where my boyfriend was, and I said I was told he wasn't invited. They asked why, and I said I had no idea why. This is when I started letting my surliness show and started acting rude and mean, because I was humiliated. And then I was brought into conversation with the couple's male friend Dean. I was previously told that Dean has a crush on me, and I made it clear I wouldn't be interested even if I were single. Even after that, they kept trying to message me and I ignored him. But now the people who brought me into conversation with Dean were like standing around staring at us and giggling behind their hands, like they thought they were Cupid matchmakers. Dean was absolutely a participant in this. I was meaner to Dean than I've ever been to anyone in my entire life. I was as fully rude as I've ever wanted to be when being the target of someone's romantic interest unwantedly. It's true I don't really know if I was being set up, but I was already furious before that happened. Everyone was silent and awkward. I went back and finished my meal, and as soon as I was done, picked up my purse and left and went straight to my boyfriend's house, skipping most of the reception, cake cutting, speeches, and everything. I'm now being told by the couple that they're hurt and confused why I left so early. I haven't replied. Edit. I didn't want to describe the conversation because people would probably think really badly of me if they saw how horrible I really acted. But screw it. This was toward the end of the meal and some people are still eating and some people are just partying, standing and talking, circulating around the room. I was eating and someone comes over to me goes, "Hey, could you come over here for a second? Someone has a question for you." Already I was suspicious because that was a scenario straight out of the second grade lunchroom. But fine, whatever, maybe it has to do with my bridal party stuff. So I come over and who is standing there but Dean, looking really smug, and a few other people are standing there who are already giggling. So I already start feeling angry. Because again, this is reminding me of the second grade lunchroom scenario, and I'm already imagining how it's going to go. He actually started out with, "Hey beautiful," and I went, "What do you want?" in an angry tone. I think he sensed that this wasn't going to go like what he had in his mind, but he continued what he obviously planned out. So he said, "I just wanted to ask you something," and I said, "What?" He went, "There is something wrong with my phone. Can you help me fix it?" I said, "I don't know anything about phones. Sorry, can't help you," and turned around to go back. And he went, No. What's wrong with my phone is that it doesn't have your number in it." And I just went off, because I already made it clear I was not into whatever this was, and I already turned to leave. But he interrupted me leaving and kept going despite it all. I was furious because I was already angry, plus he wasn't paying attention to how I felt or caring about it. So I felt like he deserved what I was going to give to him. I raised my voice and said, "Dean, F off and leave me alone. No, you can't have my freaking number. No, I don't want to go out with you. I don't want to talk to you. I'm not attracted to you. I don't want anything to do with you. You are not interesting or attractive to me at all. I want you to leave me the heck alone." He was looking down during all of this and not at me. And I said, "I want you to look at me and agree you're going to leave me alone from now on. Yes or no?" And he said yes, and I said, "Look at me and say yes." So he did. So I turned around and left him alone after that. I know I humiliated him and I did it on purpose. I had to admit that, but it's true. Even though I raised my voice, it was loud in the room, so only the people standing nearby and one unrelated table nearby heard it. Now for the top comments before reading the little update. Wow. There are layers to this like a freaking parfait made entirely of dog crap in different stages of decomposition, and it just kept getting worse. From the title, I thought you were the a-hole. Then it was like, okay, maybe it's everyone sucks here. Then it got to not the a-hole and kept on trucking into how the newlyweds and Dean are huge a-holes and just kept on going. Honestly, you are absolutely not the a-hole, and in fact should be commended and not engaging in some fully warranted a-hole behavior of your own. Because I absolutely do not consider rudely rejecting Dean's advances to be a-hole behavior when he is complicit in his setup attempt from hell. I think at the very least you would have been completely justified in not only leaving early, but taking your wedding gift with you because these people are not your friends. I'm still so angry about the entire thing. I wish I had told them to go screw themselves the minute they called my boyfriend some guy I might not even be with in the future. My relationship is one of the most important things in my life, and my boyfriend is precious to me. You need to cut them out immediately. They have already proven they don't care about your feelings by ignoring the fact you previously said you do not want to date this dude. If he contacts you again, get a restraining order because this is some next level diabolical manipulation, and I GTFO this environment ASAP. Which I would find absolutely hilarious, considering they don't want some random guy in their photos when they look at them later in life, but now have to look back at photos with some random girl they're not friends with anymore. LMAO. Not stay home. If you were seriously singled out like that as the only major exception by someone, either the wedding couple or anyone in the wedding party, I probably would have been more angry. Honestly, I was the most mad about how they disrespected my boyfriend in the relationship, calling him some random guy and saying I might not be with him in the future. Like, what the heck kind of way is that to talk about my relationship that's extremely important to me? Not stay home. You were treated blatantly and fairly, and it appears that there was an ulterior motive. You'd be justified if you want no contact with everybody involved in this fiasco. Now for the update. Alright, after making this post, I emailed them back, and I started small just to see what they would say. All I said to start it off was, I was uncomfortable because I was the only one without a +1 after being told nobody but engaged or married couples would have them. Multiple people at the reception started repeatedly asking me where my boyfriend was, and I was getting more and more humiliated, especially since I was seated with 2 colleagues and their Tinder boyfriends. It was humiliating to be the only one singled out, and I was extremely upset. Here's the reply I quickly got, which just meant no +1s for the ceremony. It was perfectly fine for you to bring your boyfriend to the reception, and that's what we assumed you were going to do. That's what we always planned for. The reception being much larger and looser. We never heard from you about bringing your boyfriend to the reception, so we didn't plan for it, but it always would have been fine. This reply is some BS. That was never, ever said to me at all or presented as an option. I would have actually been fine with that as a compromise. Yes, this is a toilet paper answer. She's just trying to cover her butt. Was there an empty seat next to you? Nope. What kind of wedding doesn't account for everyone at the ceremony and the reception? She's been caught out and is lying. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. You're right, it's BS. Call it out. If that is the case, why was this option not brought up when I asked in person why I could not bring boyfriend? If you expected him, why did you not inquire as to why he did not RSVP? Why didn't you ask me what his meal choice was? You know very well you went out of your way to make sure he did not attend a reception with me, and you scrambling to come up with excuses at this point is incredibly weak. Even with all of that, I would have, and plan to, let it go if groom's friends, Dean and Sneakers, person that brought you to the table, hadn't planned out a scheme to humiliate me in front of their entire table as a way of forcing me into accepting a date with a drunk and exceptionally creepy Dean. Even as I tried to politely walk away, he continued shouting pickup lines at me until I'd had enough. I don't know anyone else's names, but be sure to call them out specifically for their compliance. It is gaslighting, right? That is not the reply I expected, and it made me second-guess myself. Like, wait, did they say something about bringing him to the reception? But no, they didn't. If they were expecting you to bring him to the reception, there would have been a seat for him and presumably would have needed food preferences. Yeah, it seems like they were sort of framing it as blaming me, saying that they expected him to come at first, but because they never heard anything from me, they didn't go ahead and plan for him. Now for the last story. Update. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay for professional hair, makeup, new shoes, and stay in an expensive Airbnb for my friend's out-of-town wedding? Original post. Hi all. My 28 female friend, 30 female, let's call her Brooke, is getting married to her long-distance boyfriend, 28 male, for 6 months. For background, I live in a city about a 16-hour drive away from where Brooke lives. However, the groom also lives in a different city from both myself and a bride, somewhere in between both of us. She will be getting married on her groom's farm in a different state about 6 hours away from me. A couple of days later, all hell breaks loose when Brooke's first list of requirements emerge in the group chat. 1. Makeup and hair must be professionally done and paid for by bridesmaid. $200 for both. 2. We must purchase nude flats and we may not wear heels. Around $30 to $50. As she is worried she and her groom will look shorter than us. 3. We must wear the jewelry of her choice. To be fair to her, she said this would be a barred gift to us once she decides what look she is going for. 4. Nails must be bare or in the mauve color she has selected for her dress. 5. The dress must be from the local boutique. 16 hours drive or a 3-hour plane flight away from me. It must be floor length with straps. The boutique doesn't ship, but my sister is picking it up, trying it on, and sending pictures. I texted her explaining I'm traveling for the wedding and I'm happy to pay the accommodation, airfare, and for the dress. But that if she was requiring professional makeup and specific non-heeled shoes, that she should pay for the extra things she wants. I explained that I am happy to pay for the usual things, but that my budget wouldn't allow for professional hair and makeup and new shoes. She said she would speak to her groom about allowing me to stay on the farm property, but that the makeup was non-negotiable. Fast forward again today. Brooke texts me and says she will have to renege on the offer she made to me to let me stay in the farmhouse on the night after the wedding. She reserved an Airbnb in the city, $200 a night, for the wedding party. However, she says she will only be paying for the night prior to the wedding. Brooke tells me that she thinks I should stay in the Airbnb she booked, since there is a 2-night minimum and she would like the money back. I politely declined and said I would try to find accommodations in the city for the night after the wedding, since there are some reasonable places to stay. I asked if there would be anyone to transport me back to the city since no cabs or public transportation will go there. Brooke says she will not arrange transportation for me unless I stay in the $200 Airbnb and pay her back for the cost of it. She said I may bring a tent or have to figure it out myself. I'm more than willing to pay for the dress, transportation, etc. The cost of being in her wedding right now is $1,256, including all travel expenses, dress, and extras she's asked for. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. Are you absolutely sure even going is worth it? I'm leaning really hard towards noping right out of this whole bizarre event. Not the a-hole. And all of this for a 6-month-old relationship. Brides have some of the most extreme cases of delusion/entitlement I've ever seen. Long distance at that. Not the a-hole. As someone planning a wedding myself, I would never demand my bridesmaid spend this much on something this specific. She should be footing that bill. I wouldn't bother going to a wedding where I'd have to spend $1,300 just for the wedding. I asked my girls to buy a navy dress on Amazon for $35 and show up. They looked beautiful, and I was giving them gifts. I don't understand the entitlement. I hope Opie knows she's not the a-hole, and I hope she doesn't waste her time and money to fulfill her friend's Instagram photo wishes. This is super considerate. I know the dress and looking presentable is part of it, so that makes sense to me. But it seems so focused on what I look like and how much I'm spending, and not at all in just being there to support her for her big day and having a good time. I do want to see her get married, but it seems like she wants me there for the Insta and that sweet, sweet purple aesthetic. Not stay home. You can afford what you can afford and have been very upfront. Off topic, but long-distance fiancé of 6 months and groom's farm? Please let this be an example of people who met on farmersonly.com. Haha, I wish. They did meet online, but not Farmers Only. Let's just say this may be a scene out of Deliverance. It's bring your own bottle and cake will only be served to the groom and bride since it's too expensive. And now for the update. Hi again. Since one user said they would summon an internet ghost to hunt me if I was a bridesmaid in this wedding, here's an unsolicited update. After taking a day or two to think it through, I texted my friend and explained to her the following. Summarized. I think she's a great friend and we have a lot of great memories together. I was excited to make a new one on her big day. That being said, I couldn't afford the expenses she required, such as professional hair, makeup, specific shoes, and a chosen Airbnb. I explained that the $200 it would cost to attend is over my budget, and I simply could not afford the things she is asking for. I don't want to put her in a position where she would be compromising on things she wanted to accommodate my budget. So the best thing for me to do was to bow out of being a bridesmaid right now, so she can have ample time to find a replacement. I also explained that I had some concerns with how I was going to get off the farm after the night of the wedding, since she said she would only offer transport if I stayed in the shared $200 Airbnb. She wasn't sure who else would be staying there. I said I'd have to be in court for a trial 2 days after the wedding, and while I'm usually very flexible, I couldn't leave that part to chance since my career is important to me. Brooke responded with the following, summarized. She has been very busy planning her move, doing report cards, she's a teacher, and planning the wedding. She felt that since I'm a lawyer, I should be able to afford everything she's asking for. For reference, I'm a very new government lawyer and have massive student debt. And says she deserves a bridesmaid who will meet her expectations and be able to support her. I am not sure how to respond to her, or if I will, but I do think I dodged a bullet. Or at least a trip to Crazy Town. Thank you so much to all of you who convinced me to not attend this disaster. You have saved me $1,200 and 6 months of horror. Update. Am I the a-hole for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family? Original post. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as it is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked-in stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought affair partners into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day, and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave, but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto me in the form of screaming, insulting, or general demeaning, my father never once fought the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to Dad about something Mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug, or just insist I forget about it. Heck, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18, and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful, and I could have easily gone down the incel route, if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in a divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her affair partners. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see, and instead put that energy to my future. I've been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him, but he is family, so whatever I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his coworker should work instead to forgive his wife, and by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness, and how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head, and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years, and I never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was freaking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit, and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up, I shouted how he was a pathetic father, a pathetic man. His family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like garbage than defend him because he's a freaking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather sleep with half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never, ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting, and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it, and I'm now going through my therapy. That's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family's pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers/my uncle said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are mad I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. Now for the top comments before reading the update. All I can say, based on your post and this interaction, is your anger is deeply misguided, and you're failing to recognize the truly horrifying thing. You're behaving like the mother you actually should hate. Oh, trust me, I fully hate her as well. But she's gone, and there is no use in holding a grudge against a dead person. I'd hoped, though, after his son making him an outsider in his life, his family openly joking face-to-face about his failings as a father, and his ex-wife draining him for everything he had and making him start over in a one-bedroom apartment, his friends slowly leaving his life one at a time out of embarrassment, that he would maybe have at least one moment to reflect, and maybe consider he should have done things differently. It sounds like you finally got to express the pent-up feelings you've carried for so long. While the outburst wasn't ideal, it seems like it was a necessary step towards healing. It's good you're resuming therapy to process this further. Yeah, afterwards it hit me that although it was very cathartic, it definitely wasn't the most appropriate way to handle it, lol. Don't let this concern you too much. You were greatly harmed as a child. While you are an adult, the harm people receive as a child becomes a core part of them, in personality, the way the brain is wired, and even in the physical body. Immune response. Your father's neglect to protect you from abuse came from his passivity. Neglect is abuse. Him allowing another to abuse you while present, he was an active participant. Now, him telling others they should be more like himself, modeling his passivity as a virtue, should create a visceral action in you. This is a critical moment in your healing. An adult finally stood up for the abused child. Someone finally stepped in and said this is not okay. You just happen to be both the abused child and the active adult who stepped up to advocate for the child. Any person who was an adult at a time who could have stepped up and stopped the harm that both your parents put you through don't get to say anything about the way you're handling it now. They had an opportunity to step in and step up. They failed. Live a wonderful life. Be good to yourself. Life can be filled with so much joy and wonder. I hope you can feel the fullness of healing. Now for the update days later. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even amongst some of the YTAs. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringeworthy. 1. Some of them were very angry and they kind of confused me at first, until I saw their comments further down or saw their profile and saw rants about double standards, or complete non-sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, and they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. 2. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man who I'm just being a big bully to. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. 3. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed and understands why I kinda snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic family, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family, since my father will always be there. I told her don't worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterwards to figure that out. So that part's fine. Looked like kind of an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her my intentions to resume my therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. That it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been in private and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally, until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am nor would I ever be establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation, I was kind of just going on a tangent, because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freak out resulted in my grandmother having a mini freak out of her own, when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire on her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret. My father is failing. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just an easy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really sunk in for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in them telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being, and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspective and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine, and I'm sorry for them as well for ruining the day. Which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages, with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father. And finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents staring into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither him nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child, and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye, and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track for therapy and admit that a public whining moment isn't okay, but I should be fine. Even if Opie doesn't hate his father, he surely doesn't respect him, and it's hard to maintain any kind of relationship like that. The fact that not even his son respects him has to be one hell of a wake-up call. It's likely that the dad was telling himself that despite everything he went through, the mother's abuse, he's still a good person, and he still did the right thing by not divorcing her. He's convinced himself that because it's too painful to acknowledge that his choices directly led to the abuse of a child for years. People lie to themselves about stuff all the time to keep themselves going, a kind of self-delusion. While this can help you cope in the short term, it handicaps you and prevents you from accepting your own mistakes and learning from them, becoming a better person and growing emotionally. You see this from cheaters all the time. It was a mistake. It's true love. I found a soulmate. We have a special connection. We were drunk and got carried away. My spouse was happier not knowing. I didn't want to hurt them, etc. Rather than admitting their own flaws, figuring out their own shortcomings that led them to do something so callous to someone they claim to care about, and then taking steps to rectify them. When his own son came out and emphatically said otherwise, other family members and his own mother kicked him out, it had to have made it much harder for him to keep up his delusion. Hopefully this means he'll stay away a bit, and hope he can continue to have a relationship with the rest of his relatives. I don't particularly care what becomes of the father, as with all people who abuse or enable the abuse of children. I just hope he stays away and doesn't do further harm. OP's well-being is far more important. The father did abuse OP. Neglect counts. And watching your kid be abused and doing nothing about it counts as neglect. This father sounds emotionally dead. This goes beyond cowardice or passivity. There is something deeply wrong with his emotional stability to be this empty. His white-knuckling through life, just allowing things to happen to him. I was thinking the same. What happened? Honestly, I hate conflicts and confrontations too, and I'm working on my wimpiness. But at least I get angry if only on the inside. I'm so curious about his thought process. Last story. Am I the a-hole for bringing up mother-in-law's finances at a family gathering after she constantly brings up mine? My mother-in-law is constantly making derogatory comments about our finances. We aren't rich, but we aren't broke either, and we have never asked her for money. She has chosen to give us some generous gifts, so really it is none of her business. Every time we are excited about something, new car, a trip, some home renovations, she has to chime in and ask if we can afford it, or if we are sure it is a good use of money. I've also heard through the grapevine that she thinks I'm spoiled. Not sure where she is getting that from. If she was just frugal herself, that might not bother me so much. But mother-in-law lives a very lavish life and doesn't say this nonsense to anyone. Her man-child boyfriend recently went out and bought a Ferrari because he was sad, and she didn't say anything about that. She is a CEO, and I know she makes bank, but still we are not poor. I'm sick of it, and I've asked my husband to talk to her. But truth be told, he is kind of a wuss. We had a family gathering recently, and my mother-in-law pursed her lips when she found out I had upgraded my wedding band, and made a snide comment that it wasn't even 10 years, and implied it was a waste of money. I looked right at her and began asking questions. How much do you have in your bank account? Who pays your bills? Are you splitting the money equal in your will? Because we all know you like your daughter more. What did that bag cost? Mother-in-law was horrified and said I'm tacky for talking about money. I clapped back that she has been talking about my money for years and clearly doesn't like it when the shoe is on the other foot. She rolled her eyes and stormed off. My husband was mortified and said I really went too far and embarrassed him in front of his family. Now for the comments. Lol, I think it was hilarious. Since your husband is mama's boy, somebody needs to be aggressive. Now you're mortified? She's been embarrassing me for years in front of family, and you've done nothing. Shut her down or get ready for more of this. Not a-hole. But really, I hope you're prepared to deal with this for life, because it sounds like your husband is his mother's emotional surrogate, who would still be with her if it weren't for you, and your husband hands his balls to her when she's around. Personally, I prefer to be the only woman with access to my husband's balls, but you do you. They aren't even that close. He's just terrified of her. To be fair, most people are. But she isn't one of those boy moms. Why is he terrified of his mom? Regardless, tell him that the only way for him to no longer be terrified of her is to stand up to her. She's probably waiting for him to do that anyway. It's very freeing. Everyone's terrified of her. She's ruthless and cutthroat in business and doesn't know how to turn it off when she gets home. He grew up watching everyone in the family buckle to her demands, mostly because they wanted her to pay for stuff. It's sad he doesn't get she doesn't respect any of them because they let her act this way. Exactly. Your husband and you don't sound like you need her money. So if your husband wants her respect, he has to stop cowering before her. You did it, so he can too. Besides, she's a huge hypocrite who seems to have major look at me syndrome. Update. I, 28 male, want a divorce from my wife, 27 female, but everyone wants me to forgive her. Original post. My wife and I have been married for 3 years. First, let me say that as far as I know, my wife hasn't been struggling with any issues. And we've known each other since grade school. We literally know everything about each other and our families. About 2 months ago, I came home and found my wife and our 6-month-old daughter on a couch. My wife was asleep, and my daughter was lying next to her. The moment I went over to greet them, I could smell that my daughter needed a diaper change. I didn't know how long it had been since her last change, but I didn't want to disturb my wife. She never naps during the day, so if she was asleep, I figured she must have had an especially hectic and exhausting day. I took our daughter to her room and placed her on the changing table to change her diaper. I was just getting started when, not even 2 minutes later, my wife came into the room. As I greeted her, she looked at me, then down at our daughter on the changing table, and suddenly flew into a rage. She started yelling and physically attacking me. I was completely stunned and didn't know what was happening. Instinctively, I leaned over our daughter to shield her from the blows. My wife was screaming and hitting me, shouting, "How could you?" over and over again, calling me a monster. I was in shock and had no idea what she was talking about. Everything had been perfectly normal that morning when I left for work. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and there had been no signs of any problems. She then ran out of the room, and about 5 minutes later, 3 police officers showed up and placed me in handcuffs while my wife was in hysterics, claiming she had caught me sexually assaulting our daughter. I was completely speechless and couldn't comprehend what was happening. I asked her what she was talking about, but all she kept saying was that she saw me doing it. I was arrested and spent the night in custody. Fortunately, I was released the next day when the police reviewed the camera footage from our daughter's room. The footage clearly showed that I was only changing her diaper and that nothing inappropriate had happened. There was no evidence to support my wife's accusations, and it was evident that she had attacked me without any provocation. After being released, I felt numb. I couldn't believe that my wife would even think I was capable of doing something so horrific, let alone accuse me of it in front of the police. The moment those words came out of her mouth, it was like all the love I had for her just evaporated. Since then, I have felt nothing but an emptiness inside, a void where my feelings for her used to be. I had divorce papers served to her a week ago, and since then, my phone has been blowing up with calls and texts from her, apologizing repeatedly. But honestly, I don't care about her apologies. In over 374 messages, she hasn't given me a single explanation for what happened, or why she thought I would harm our daughter. All she says is sorry and that we should try marriage counseling or individual therapy. I don't want counseling. She can go if she wants, but I won't be involved. I am also pursuing full custody of our daughter. My lawyer has informed me that given the circumstances, including my wife's violent outburst which was caught on camera, the fact that I had to shield our daughter from her, and the false accusations she made against me, there is a good chance I will be awarded full custody. Her behavior raises serious concerns about her mental state, and I want to ensure my daughter is in a safe environment. Despite everything that happened, my family, her family, and even some of our friends are insisting that I'm taking things too far by seeking a divorce and aiming for full custody. They say I should give her another chance, but nobody can explain why she did what she did or offer any justification for her actions. Even my wife hasn't been able to provide a reason in all her messages. I feel worn down as the gravity of everything starts to hit me. I'm mentally and emotionally exhausted from dealing with the fallout, and I'm questioning whether I'm missing something. Why is everyone on her side? What could have driven her to make such a horrific accusation without any evidence? I'm at a loss and I don't know what to do anymore. If anyone has any advice or insight, I'd really appreciate it. What am I missing here? Now for the top advice before reading the update. You do not need to stay in this relationship no matter what caused her to snap. She physically attacked you, she called the police, and said you assaulted your own daughter. If you feel divorce is the best option and have mentally checked out, it is the best option. Honestly, at the moment I'm thinking that something is wrong with me. I don't see myself ever getting past this. What about the next time I'm alone in a room with my daughter, playing with her or anything? Divorce is the only option for me, as I will not be in a relationship that I have to constantly look over my shoulder, especially if I did nothing wrong. If anything, you're missing something really significant. If you hadn't had cameras in the room to prove your innocence, you'd be in jail right now, awaiting trial for one of the most horrible crimes imaginable. Your wife would be divorcing you, and your life would be utterly destroyed. You'd likely never see your daughter again, you'd be unemployable, and you'd be shunned by both family and friends. I'm not usually one of those dump her Reddit folks, but in this situation, you don't have any other option in my opinion. There's no coming back from a false SA accusation. There's no apology she can offer that could ever make things right. Hire the best attorney you can afford, and scorch the earth. If your family or friends don't agree, forget them. They don't matter. I guarantee that if there was no cameras, they would have been on your wife's side. If you feel you need to divorce, then you do what you need to do. It's a hard situation and will be difficult, especially with the legalities around it all. But staying is not going to do you any good. That is a given, but I can't understand if I'm missing something. Especially my friend that know the full story and still taking her side, saying divorce is a step too far. I feel like I'm missing something that I'm not seeing. Was I wrong to change my daughter's diaper? Should I have woken up my wife to do it? Should I just have left her like that? Now for the updates a month later. Quick update as life has been hectic lately, especially with everything going on. The divorce is currently in progress. My daughter is in my custody and my lawyer has assured me that it's almost certain I will be granted full custody. Given the circumstances, my soon-to-be ex-wife will likely only be allowed supervised visits with our daughter. As for what actually happened, it turns out that my wife had a dream, and when she walked into the room and saw me changing our daughter, she somehow confused the dream with reality. In her mind, what she had dreamed seemed real, and that's what led her to accuse me of something so horrific. It's difficult to wrap my head around how a dream could cause such a drastic reaction. But that's the explanation I've been given. I'm still processing everything and it's been a whirlwind of emotions. Between dealing with legal matters, caring for my daughter, and trying to understand how things got to this point, life has been anything but calm. I'll provide a full update when I have more time, but for now, that's where things stand. I am sorry your family is ruined, but you are doing the right thing. You need to protect yourself and your daughter. I don't think mentally healthy people act like that because of the dream they had. She was awake long enough to call the cops and to give them statements. If it was hallucinations, psychosis, delusions, she is most likely paranoid schizophrenic. What if her next dream will be that her house is contaminated with some lethal poison and she has to burn it? Or you or your baby are demons and she has to unalive you? You are not in prison and not on a certain list by pure luck. Your life is not ruined by pure luck. Next time, you might not be so lucky. She needs professional mental health evaluation and lifelong mental health help. Getting yourself and your baby out of that situation was absolutely the right decision and should have been your top priority. You did a correct thing. That said, I think a lot of people on the forum are dismissing your soon-to-be ex-wife's reaction as simply something unreasonable and stupid that she had full control over. I'd like to point out that this may not necessarily be the case. For example, if she wasn't getting enough sleep or wasn't sleeping for long enough periods, example getting up every 3 hours all night to tend to the baby without napping during the day, sleep deprivation could be a factor. Sleep deprivation is no joke. It can cause hallucinations, paranoia, delusions, disorientation, irritability, violent outbursts, and severely impair one's judgment, among other things. And that's assuming there weren't any other underlying issues, such as postpartum depression, PPD, or pre-existing trauma. Personally, I'd want to understand whether her behavior was truly within her control or if there was contributing factors before proceeding directly to divorce. Next story. My male 33 wife, female 34, grieves over a child I never told or agreed would have. How to move forward. My wife, female 34, and I, male 33, have been married for 7 years and together for 10. Back then, we didn't discuss children in detail, except to say that she wanted 1 or 2 at some point. And I agreed. 1, maybe 2 at most. 4 years ago, we had our first child, male 4, and 2 years later, our second child, male 2, was born. After the first, I already felt it was challenging enough. But I agreed to have a second child, reasoning that having a sibling would be good for our first. For me, that was it. I didn't want any more children. And I thought my wife felt the same. We didn't really discuss it further after that. Now that our second has turned 2, my wife wants to try for a third child. She says she wants a big family now. I'm not on board with this. I never wanted that. I told her how I felt and stood my ground. There's been a lot of crying on both sides, and we've each given our arguments, but we're both convinced we're right. There's no way to compromise on this issue. You can't have half a baby. My wife has been having periods of intense sadness, sometimes crying for entire days. On those days, she can't even look at me. Other times, it seems like she has come to terms with it and life goes on. We have 2 small children to take care of, and life is busy. On those days, I think we'll be okay. But then another wave of grief hits, and it feels like she's mourning the idea of a baby I never agreed to have. I'm not sure how I can help the situation further because to me, there are only 2 possible outcomes. She comes to terms with having 2 children, or we end up breaking up because she wants to find someone else who is willing to have a third child with her. Is there a third option that I'm not seeing? I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. And I've even started telling people who visit not to bring up innocent questions like, when's the third one coming, in order to avoid triggering another emotional episode. If anyone has experienced a similar situation and found a way through it, I'd appreciate hearing your stories. Any small details or advice that could help her or me would be welcome. Have you asked your wife why she wants another baby? Is it just about the idea of having a large family? Or is it that she wants a girl? I think that's worth unpacking. Not that it will solve your issue, of course, but it might help you understand what she feels is missing from your family at present that another baby might add. She says now it's the big family. Although yes, she did hope for our second to be a girl. Not sure if that still plays, and she's ashamed to say it. As you mentioned, it doesn't solve or change the situation though. So I stopped pondering about that. Marriage counseling and possibly individual therapy for your wife, not because there's anything wrong with her. It's absolutely reasonable for her to discover along the road of having 2 children that she wants 3, and it's absolutely reasonable for you who only wanted 1 and possibly 2 to realize that you don't want any more children. But she is grieving a genuine emotional loss, and therapy can help her work through that. But marriage counseling is also necessary to help the 2 of you work through the realization that 2 people can love each other and not want exactly the same out of life, and more importantly, how to move forward. Unavailable where we live, unfortunately. I've proposed to find it online through video calls, but that hasn't been taken up yet. It feels like true grievance, and I give her all the space she needs when it happens. She won't look at me during these periods, so I think therapy in person, even if it would exist here, would be difficult. She needs therapy, and badly. Spending whole days crying and fostering this bitterness towards you isn't good for her or the family she already has. Honestly, I wonder how much of that is genuine grief, and how much is demonstrative crying a la, "See what you are doing to me, you monster," to manipulate him. If it's actually genuine, then she's probably depressive AF and needs help. Anyway, it's definitely not normal to wallow your grief for a potential child this much when you have 2 actual kids to take care of. I wonder what it's doing to them to see mommy cry for days on end. At this point, they're mostly ignoring it, and she goes upstairs to cry in the main bedroom. Children are not allowed to go up the stairs. I have also brought up the point to try and be happy and care for our 2 current children, but it gets ignored and said there is a room for a third. Last story. My 34 female husband, 30 male, said I wasn't attractive enough to cheat on him. My husband is gorgeous. Everybody says so. I consider myself pretty but unremarkable. My features aren't exactly supermodel material, but I do the best I can with what I've got. I have nice skin thanks to skincare, a decent body thanks to the gym, and so on. But compared to my husband, I might as well be a troll. Even my own mom thought my husband might be gay or hiding something sketchy because of how much more attractive he is than I am. It's the first thing people seem to notice when we're out. I've had women flirt with him right in front of me, and 2 girls I know even try to get with him behind my back. Sometimes I even question why he's with me. I'm insecure about it, but my husband has always reassured me, saying he loves me and thinks I'm beautiful, and that I shouldn't listen to other people. Yesterday changed everything. I bumped into an old boyfriend from college. We had parted on good terms, and it turns out he's doing well in his career. I'm considering changing jobs, and I'm pretty decent at what I do, so we exchanged LinkedIn information. There wasn't anything inappropriate about our conversation, and I wouldn't have had any problem if my husband had been there to hear it. As soon as I got home, my husband started an argument. He said he had read through my LinkedIn messages and was convinced that my ex was flirting with me. I told him he wasn't. My husband then started making fun of my ex's looks, saying some of the cruelest things I've ever heard him say. I told him to stop and said we could talk when he wasn't acting like this. He responded, "If that guy becomes your coworker and you cheat on me," then he scoffed and said, "You're not attractive enough to cheat on me, not enough to keep me." I was speechless. He then slammed the door to our bedroom and locked me out for the night. I ended up sleeping on the sofa. At some points, I vaguely remember him waking me up, and when I woke up, I was tucked into bed. Today, he was incredibly sweet and kissed me before leaving for work. I can still remember everything that happened, but it feels like an out-of-body experience. I have never heard him say anything like that before, ever. I feel so upset and uncomfortable. What do I even say to him? How do I just ask him what he was thinking? What possessed him to say the things he did? And if he really meant them? His mask slipped. Note how he realized it. Went and got her off the couch during the night and was all back to super sweet, kissy husband the next morning. You can only keep the facade up for so long. Agree. Always pay attention to what people say in the heat of the moment. It's what they really think and how they really feel. He felt bad for what he said, so he brought her to bed. But it doesn't change what he said. He showed his true colors when he said those things to her. I think you know deep down the answer to your question, and nothing he could say would explain away the truth. Regardless of what he has said before, he has deep-rooted feelings that he is more attractive and better than you. I could never ever be vulnerable and feel loved if my husband said that to me. He should feel like you are a catch and the best thing that ever happened to him. There are some things that just can't be unsaid. That's what I'm afraid of, because if he said what he meant, does that mean he looks down on me? That he thinks he's attractive enough to cheat on me? I feel very numb. I know I'm not as attractive as my husband, but I also have good qualities. No one is suffering by being my husband.